Some minds don't break from overthinking. They suffocate from seeing too much. While the world rushes forward, these people pause, not because they're lost, but because they're standing at the edge of truths most never notice. Welcome to American Wall Street. If this kind of depth speaks to you, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Your support gives us the motivation to continue creating videos that go where most conversations never dare to go. There is a quiet kind of person who often feels out of place in a loud world. They don't rush to speak. They don't react on impulse. When something happens, they don't just ask what it means. They ask what it reveals. About people, about time, about themselves. These are not people who think too much. They are people who think differently. A deep thinker is often misunderstood because the modern world has no patience for pause. Silence is mistaken for weakness. Reflection is mistaken for hesitation. But for the deep thinker, silence is not emptiness, it is processing. In the space where others rush to respond, they are weighing layers, contradictions, and hidden consequences. Their minds don't skim reality. They descend into it. Many confuse deep thinking with overthinking, but the difference is fundamental. Overthinking is driven by fear. Fear of the future, fear of loss, fear of making the wrong move. Deep thinking, on the other hand, is driven by meaning. A deep thinker is not trapped in anxiety about what might happen. They are absorbed in understanding what is. They question not to create problems, but because why feels as necessary as oxygen. Where most people see a moment, a deep thinker sees context. Where others hear words, they sense intention, subtext, and emotional weight. A passing comment can open an entire inner dialogue. A brief silence can feel louder than a speech. This is why deep thinkers often appear distant, not because they are disengaged, but because their attention is spread across dimensions most people never enter. Thinking for them is not a hobby. It is a state of being. They don't simply experience life. They interpret it. They notice how time moves, how patterns repeat, how people become echoes of their past wounds and hopes. They don't just live moments. They archive them, analyze them, and connect them to larger questions about identity and purpose. And this depth doesn't come from intelligence alone. It comes from sensitivity, from an awareness that everything carries layers beneath the surface. Deep thinkers sense that life is not meant to be consumed quickly. It is meant to be examined, felt, and understood. This is why fast conversations exhaust them, why shallow answers feel incomplete, and why they often feel unseen in rooms full of people. Yet the irony is this: the very thing that makes them profound also isolates them. In a world addicted to speed, depth looks like resistance. In a culture obsessed with certainty, questioning looks like doubt. But deep thinkers are not uncertain. They are precise. They are searching for the truest version of what something means before they let it leave their mouth. And once you understand that, their silence stops looking empty. It starts looking intentional. Before we continue, here's a question for you. Think carefully, then answer in the comments. A, do you think deeply because you are anxious about life? B, or do you think deeply because you are trying to understand it? Comment A or B below. Deep thinkers don't simply observe the world. They process it through meaning. What sets them apart is not the volume of their thoughts, but the structure of how those thoughts are formed. Their minds are not designed to skim reality. They are designed to connect, layer, and reflect. Psychologically, deep thinkers live with an unusually high level of introspection. While most people turn their attention outward, reacting to events as they unfold, deep thinkers split their awareness in two. One part engages with the external moment. The other steps back, watching the internal response arise. They don't just feel an emotion. They notice it forming, shifting, and revealing something beneath it. This constant inner observation creates a depth of self-awareness that few people ever develop. At the center of this mental architecture is metacognition, the ability to think about one's own thinking. For a deep thinker, thoughts are not final conclusions. They are raw material. A belief becomes a question. A reaction becomes something to examine. They replay conversations, not out of regret, but out of curiosity. What did that moment uncover? What pattern does it fit into? What does it say about the mind that produced it? Neuroscience offers one explanation. Deep thinkers show heightened activity in the brain's default mode network. the system responsible for reflection, imagination, memory, and abstract thought. This is the same network that activates during creativity and long-term meaning making. As a result, their inner world is constantly alive. Ideas connect to memories. Memories connect to emotions. Emotions connect to symbolic meaning. Their minds are never linear. They are associative, looping, and layered. This is why memory works differently for them. Deep thinkers do not store experiences as isolated events. They encode them with emotional depth and symbolic weight. A single moment becomes a reference point, a lesson, a mirror. When they remember, they don't recall facts. They relive atmospheres. They remember how something felt, what it represented, and how it quietly reshaped their inner narrative. This depth of processing gives their memories a haunting richness, but it also makes forgetting nearly impossible. Another defining feature is emotional cognitive integration. For deep thinkers, emotion and logic are not opposing forces. They are intertwined. Feeling is a form of information. Thought is infused with emotion. This allows them to understand human behavior with extraordinary nuance, but it also means they cannot simply turn off their minds. To suppress feeling would require suppressing thought, and that comes at a high internal cost. This mental design creates a paradox. Deep thinkers are capable of exceptional clarity, yet they are vulnerable to internal overload. When the mind is always scanning for meaning, it rarely rests. Their awareness stretches across past, present, and imagined futures simultaneously. Not because they are escaping reality, but because their mind is built to see continuity rather than moments. What many fail to realize is that this is not a flaw. It is a different operating system. Deep thinkers were never meant to process life in fragments. They are designed to synthesize, to integrate, to see how everything fits together. But when this capacity is not understood, it can feel overwhelming, even isolating. To understand deep thinkers is to recognize that their minds are not busy, they are alive, constantly interpreting, connecting, and searching for coherence beneath the surface of things. And once you see how their inner world is structured, their intensity stops looking excessive. It starts looking intentional. Depth gives deep thinkers an extraordinary gift, and it demands a heavy price. The same mental lens that allows them to see what others miss also magnifies everything they touch. Nothing arrives to them in simple form. Every experience carries weight, texture, and consequence. One of the greatest strengths of a deep thinker is their ability to perceive hidden structure. They notice emotional undercurrents beneath casual words. They sense fear behind anger, longing behind detachment, insecurity behind confidence. This sensitivity allows them to respond with insight rather than reaction. It is why they often make powerful creators, writers, analysts, and thinkers. They can hold complexity without needing to reduce it to something comfortable or easy. Their creativity does not come from imagination alone, but from integration. They connect ideas across time, emotion, and meaning. Where others see isolated events, deep thinkers see continuity. Pain is not meaningless to them. It becomes information. Suffering is not wasted. It becomes material for understanding. This is where their resilience is born, not from ignoring hardship, but from extracting meaning from it. Yet this same depth creates vulnerability. When a mind is trained to explore every layer, it rarely knows when to stop. Deep thinkers don't skim thoughts. They descend into them. A small interaction can echo for days. A single sentence can be replayed from multiple angles, each revealing a new interpretation. Not because they are insecure, but because they recognize that reality is rarely singular. This leads to rumination, not as self-punishment, but as unresolved inquiry. Their minds seek closure, coherence, and truth. When those are unavailable, the loop continues. Thoughts circle not out of weakness, but out of persistence. Their brain refuses to abandon a question until it feels fully understood, even if that understanding comes at the cost of mental rest. Another burden is emotional saturation. Because deep thinkers absorb nuance so easily, they also absorb emotional energy that is not theirs. They pick up on subtle shifts in mood, tension in a room, unspoken disappointment, quiet resentment. Over time, this accumulation becomes exhausting. The world does not need to shout to overwhelm them. It only needs to exist. This is why deep thinkers often appear tired in ways others don't understand. It is not physical fatigue, but cognitive and emotional density. Their inner world is crowded with impressions that have not yet settled. While others discharge experiences quickly, deep thinkers store them until meaning is extracted. The delay is costly, but unavoidable. And then there is the illusion-making mind. Depth creates clarity, but it also creates risk. When everything is connected, it becomes easy to see patterns that may not truly exist. Silence can be misread. Distance can feel intentional. A neutral act can be interpreted as symbolic. Their minds, powerful as they are, sometimes turn inward too sharply, transforming possibility into assumption. This is the double-edged nature of depth. The same capacity that produces insight can also produce overinterpretation. The same sensitivity that enables empathy can heighten pain. Deep thinkers live close to the edge of meaning, where clarity and confusion share the same space. Understanding this balance is essential. Their struggle is not a flaw to be corrected, but a cost to be managed. Depth, by its nature, is never light. It asks for strength, patience, and self-awareness. And for those who carry it, learning how to live with the weight without being crushed by it becomes one of the most important skills of all. Deep thinkers are often described as solitary, but solitude is not the absence of connection. It is the absence of distortion. What they seek in relationships is not company, but resonance. They are not drawn to crowds. They are drawn to depth. And because depth is rare, their lives can feel quietly lonely. In social spaces, deep thinkers tend to move slowly. While others bond through surface exchange and shared routines, they listen for meaning beneath words. Casual conversation often feels draining, not because they lack interest in people, but because their minds instinctively search for substance. When it isn't there, the interaction feels incomplete, like reading the first page of a book and being told the story is over. This is why silence follows them, not as avoidance, but as self-preservation. Deep thinkers are acutely aware of how much of themselves they invest when they speak honestly. To open up is not a small act for them. It is exposure. So they observe first. They watch how people handle nuance, disagreement, vulnerability. They notice whether someone can sit with uncertainty without rushing to simplify it. Only when they sense safety do they begin to reveal the deeper layers of who they are. Because of this, trust for a deep thinker is not given quickly. It is built through consistency, integrity, and emotional depth. They are not impressed by charm or intensity. They look for alignment between words and actions, intention and behavior. When that alignment is missing, they retreat, not in anger, but in quiet recalibration. Their withdrawal is rarely punishment. It is protection. When connection does occur, it is profound. Deep thinkers do not love halfway. They listen deeply, remember details others forget, and ask questions that cut through pretense. Their affection is shown through attention and understanding. But this depth also creates vulnerability. Because they experience connection as something meaningful and rare, disappointment hits harder. Misunderstanding feels heavier. Betrayal feels existential, not because the act was large, but because the trust behind it was. Solitude then becomes essential, not as escape, but as restoration. Alone, deep thinkers can release the emotional residue of the world. They process what was felt but not said, what was sensed but not confirmed. In silence, their inner world settles. The noise fades. Perspective returns. Solitude is where they realign with themselves, where clarity replaces overload. This need for solitude is often misinterpreted. Others may assume withdrawal means disinterest or emotional distance. In reality, it is the opposite. Deep thinkers withdraw precisely because they feel too much. They absorb emotional energy easily, and without time alone, that absorption becomes overwhelming. Solitude allows them to separate what is theirs from what is not. Because they see multiple perspectives so clearly, deep thinkers often struggle to take sides. They understand how pain shapes behavior, how history influences choices, how fear disguises itself in many forms. This makes judgment difficult and empathy unavoidable. But empathy has a cost. To understand everyone is to carry pieces of everyone. And over time, that weight accumulates. This is why deep thinkers are selective about who they allow close, not out of arrogance, but out of necessity. They must protect their inner equilibrium. They must choose connections that nourish rather than drain. And while this selectiveness may limit the number of relationships they maintain, it deepens the quality of the ones that remain. To walk alongside a deep thinker is to understand that their distance is not rejection and their silence is not emptiness. It is simply the rhythm of a mind that values depth over noise and truth over convenience. There comes a moment in the life of every deep thinker when understanding is no longer enough. After years of analyzing, connecting, and searching for meaning, a quiet realization begins to surface. Not everything that matters can be explained, and not everything that can be explained needs to be. In the early stages, deep thinkers believe that clarity will bring peace. If they can just understand their emotions, decode their past, or unravel the patterns of human behavior, then calm will follow. But over time, they discover a paradox. The mind that is powerful enough to interpret life is also powerful enough to exhaust itself. Insight without grounding becomes a loop. Awareness without presence becomes weight. This is where true maturation begins. The deep thinker learns that thinking was never meant to replace living. Reflection was meant to serve experience, not dominate it. The endless search for answers slowly gives way to a different question. What happens if I stop trying to solve everything and simply stay here? Presence becomes the turning point, not as a concept, but as a practice. Instead of dissecting every feeling, they allow themselves to feel it fully and let it pass. Instead of analyzing every moment for hidden meaning, they begin to trust that meaning can emerge without force. They realize that some truths are not revealed through thought, but through stillness. At this stage, deep thinkers stop mistaking complexity for depth. They understand that depth does not require constant inquiry. Sometimes it requires restraint, the courage to not follow every thought, the discipline to let unanswered questions exist without anxiety. This is not intellectual surrender, it is psychological balance. Another shift occurs in how they relate to suffering. Earlier, pain was something to interpret, extract lessons from, and integrate into identity. Now, pain is allowed to be pain. It is felt, honored, and released without needing to become a philosophy. This softens the inner world. It creates space, and in that space, peace becomes possible. Meaning, they realize, is not something hidden behind reality waiting to be discovered. It is something created through attention, through how one listens, loves, chooses, and remains present. Life stops being a puzzle and starts becoming a process. Less about conclusions, more about participation. This does not make deep thinkers shallow. It makes them free. Their minds remain capable of depth, but they are no longer imprisoned by it. They can move between thought and experience fluidly. They can analyze when needed and rest when it is not. They begin to trust that not every silence needs interpretation, and not every emotion needs translation. In this final stage, depth becomes wisdom, not heavy, but clear, not consuming, but grounding. The deep thinker no longer tries to drown in understanding. They float. They see clearly enough to stay present, engaged, and alive. And that is the quiet mastery of the deep thinker, knowing when to go deep and knowing when to let go. Conclusion, about 100 words. Deep thinkers remind us that life is not meant to be rushed, skimmed, or simplified. Their journey shows that depth is not a flaw, but a different way of engaging with reality, one that sees meaning where others see noise. Yet the ultimate wisdom of deep thinking is balance, knowing when to question and when to be present, when to analyze and when to simply feel. True depth is not drowning in thought, but learning how to float within it, clear, grounded, and awake to the moment as it is. Lesson and application. The deeper lesson is this: thinking deeply should enrich your life, not replace it. Use reflection to understand yourself, but practice presence to stay connected to living. Create space for silence, limit mental overload, and allow some questions to remain unanswered. Let thought serve experience, not dominate it. Question for you: do you believe deep thinking brings more clarity or more burden to life? Please share your perspective in the comments so everyone can learn from different viewpoints. If this content resonates with you, kindly subscribe to American Wall Street to support the channel and motivate us to keep creating thoughtful, meaningful videos.